The commentator laughed, not because it was funny, because there was nothing else left to do. When the VAR line appeared on the screen inside Miami Stadium on Friday night, and the tip of Davinson Sanchez's right boot was shown to be fractionally ahead of the last Portuguese defender, Fox Sports analyst Stu Holden, a former United States international, a man who has seen thousands of football matches, let out a disbelieving laugh and reached for the only words that made sense. "That's a size 10 instead of a size 9 cleat," he said. Wow! A size 10 shoe instead of a size 9. That was the difference. That was the gap between a Colombian victory and a goalless draw, between a story of triumph and a story of what might have been. And in that single involuntary moment of stunned amusement from one of the broadcast booth's most experienced voices, something crystallized about this World Cup that football fans around the world had been feeling for weeks but struggling to articulate. The technology is right, but the technology is also breaking something. Stay with us, because this story goes far beyond one goal, one defender, one toe. It goes to the very heart of a debate that the 2026 World Cup has forced into the open, and that football's lawmakers can no longer pretend they do not need to answer. Let's start with what actually happened in Miami, because it needs to be seen in full before it can be properly understood. Colombia arrived at their final Group K match against Portugal, needing only a draw to confirm top spot. Portugal needed a win. On paper, this was a match with imbalanced stakes, one team defending, one team attacking. In reality, what unfolded at Miami Stadium was 90 minutes of football so entertaining, so richly competitive, so packed with quality and tension from both sides, that it has already been described as one of the great goalless draws in the history of the tournament. Matt Damon watched it from the stands. John Leguizamo was there too, and neither of them, nor the tens of millions watching on screens across the world, could have predicted that the match's defining moment would arrive not from Cristiano Ronaldo, not from James Rodriguez, not from any of the world-class attacking talent distributed across both squads, but from Davinson Sanchez, Colombia's central defender, rising to meet a corner in the first minute of stoppage time. The delivery was superb. The run was perfectly timed. The header was authoritative and precise, driven downward into the bottom corner with the technique of a player who has spent a career making exactly this kind of contribution in exactly this kind of moment, at Tottenham Hotspur, at Galatasaray, and now on football's biggest stage against one of the tournament's most celebrated teams. The net moved. The stadium erupted. The Colombian players sprinted toward the corner flag. And then the flag. Then the earpiece, then the weight that every football supporter in the modern era now recognizes as one of the most agonizing experiences their sport has produced. The VAR review confirmed what the assistant referee had already indicated. Sanchez's right big toe was ahead of the last Portuguese defender at the moment the corner was delivered. The goal was disallowed. On his microphone, Fox's play-by-play voice, John Strong, confirmed that technically the referees had made the right call by the letter of the law. And beside him, Stu Holden laughed again, the laugh of a football man confronting a contradiction his sport has not yet resolved. Because here is the contradiction. The offside law was not written to catch toenails. It was written to prevent goal hanging, to stop players from camping behind the defensive line, waiting for a ball to be played over the top with an advantage over the goalkeeper that turned scoring into something closer to an unfair exercise than a rewarding one. That was the problem the law was designed to solve.
A central defender throwing himself into a header from a corner kick with every sinew of his body committed to the athletic effort of connecting with the ball before the goalkeeper can reach it is not goal hanging. The position of his toe provides no advantage over Diogo Costa. It provides no head start. It offers no shortcut to glory. It is simply the natural consequence of a powerfully built professional athlete attacking a set-piece delivery at full stretch and landing his foot an inch further forward than the technology will permit. The proposal that has been circulating among football's governance and reform community for months is called a daylight standard. The principle is simple. For an offside to be called, a player's body should need to be visibly, clearly, unambiguously ahead of the defensive line, not by a computer's pixel, but by a gap that an observer could see with their own eyes. The marginal millimeter, the armpit offside, the shoulder offside, the toe offside would no longer be sufficient. None of those proposals are in place yet, and so Sanchez's goal does not stand. But step back from that specific injustice for a moment and look at the bigger picture of Colombia's tournament, because the VAR story of this squad across their group stage campaign is one that the rest of the competition cannot ignore. This disallowed goal against Portugal was the fourth goal Colombia had taken from them across the group stage. 3 were disallowed against DR Congo, Muñoz's for offside early, Luis Diaz's brilliant solo effort for a foul in the build-up, Diaz's second, late goal for offside, and now this. 4 goals in 2 matches, taken away by the technology that was supposed to make football fairer. And yet Colombia stand as Group K winners, 7 points, 2 victories and a draw, Copa America champions who have outplayed every opponent they have faced at this tournament and who enter the round of 32 as one of the most technically impressive sides still competing. They did it despite what was taken, and that itself is a statement. The match in Miami that the scoreboard eventually called a draw was never actually a draw in footballing terms. Colombia created chances worth 1.63 expected goals. Portugal, carrying Cristiano Ronaldo at 41 years old, making his 25th World Cup appearance, the most decorated player in the history of this competition, managed 0.69. The 41-year-old who has defined European football for 2 decades managed 3 shots and 35 touches across 90 minutes. Colombia's pressing system, designed and executed by Nestor Lorenzo with forensic precision, rendered him almost completely ineffective. What kept Portugal level was not their own football. It was a single extraordinary individual performance from Diogo Costa, the goalkeeper who had already set a personal record for saves in a single World Cup match by the 57th minute, and who finished the evening with 6 saves against a Colombian attack that deserved by any reasonable measure to have scored at least once before injury time even arrived.
And yet the detail that defines the night, that will be replayed and discussed long after the statistics have been forgotten, is a Fox Sports commentator laughing in disbelief, and the phrase that spread across social media before the teams had even shaken hands: a toenail. That was it. That was all. The broader conversation about what it means for football's relationship with its own technology has been building across this entire tournament. Brazil filed a formal complaint with FIFA over a disallowed Vinicius Jr. goal against Scotland. Ghana watched penalty claims wave away by a VAR team that the referee chose not to consult. Iran had 2 significant goals disallowed across their campaign. Uzbekistan's Azizjan Ganiyev struck what would have been one of the great World Cup strikes and lost it to a review of a build-up challenge the naked eye could barely detect. The pattern is not a coincidence. Semi-automated offside technology, VAR interventions in build-up plays, and the human judgment required to determine which challenges meet the threshold for review have created a tournament where the relationship between the football played and the scoreline produced is more fragile than any expansion to 48 teams was ever supposed to allow. James Rodriguez, the man who at halftime paused to have a friendly conversation with Cristiano Ronaldo on the way back to the tunnel, the way old colleagues from their years together at Real Madrid always do, became on Friday evening the first Colombian player to make 11 World Cup appearances. He created 5 clear-cut chances. He played 43 passes in the final third, more than anyone else on the pitch. He was, by every available measure, the best player on the field at Miami Stadium. And he came away without a goal, without an assist, and with a 4th disallowed goal sitting in the record of his team's group stage campaign. Colombia faced Ghana in Kansas City on July 3rd.
Ghana's manager is Carlos Queiroz, the same Carlos Queiroz who had a difficult and short-lived spell in charge of Colombia between 2019 and 2020, a period neither party recalls with particular fondness. The history between those men and between those nations will add a charge to that match that the football alone would already make compelling. But before the round of 32 arrives, the question that Colombia's group stage has placed on the table deserves an answer that football's lawmakers have so far failed to provide. At what point does technology stop serving the game and start overruling it? Stu Holden's laughter is still echoing, and somewhere in Miami, Davinson Sanchez is staring at a photograph of his right big toe and wondering the same thing.